Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast, favorite Giant podcast. I am your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan. And we are on the road today. As you can tell, things look a little bit different. I am on the road. He is at home, but I am running the show remotely. So things look a little weird, but we're going to power through it. If it's a little choppy, I apologize for that. But I promise that you're not missing much of our beautiful faces.
Grump, following this team is a little weird anyway, so this just fits right in. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and we're going to get right into this because the Giants had a major news drop the day of our episode, I think, or it was the day after. Either way, we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but let's get right into this. Giants versus Eagles on Sunday at 1 o'clock at MetLife Stadium, the Saquon Barkley revenge game. Andrew Thomas is out for likely the year. He's been put on IR. Everyone is expecting him to be out for the year. He had a lisfranc injury that he sustained during the game against the Bengals on Sunday night, and he finished the game anyway, and then consulted with Dr. Robert Anderson, which is never a good sign, and had a successful surgery this week. I will say the fact that he could have immediate surgery usually means that the injury is somewhat less severe. Sometimes when it's really severe, they have to wait a couple of weeks for swelling to go down beforehand. And I'm not a doctor, so maybe this actually means nothing. But that is something that I know. For instance, Daniel Jones's surgery, they had to wait a couple of, I don't know if it was like maybe a week or maybe like 10 days or something like that for swelling to go down before they could do surgery. So nevertheless, this is a significant blow, about as significant a blow as it could be for the Giants. This is probably the singular injury. Maybe there's like 5 guys that if they're out for the year, it will torpedo the Giants season. And he's maybe number 1, 2, or 3 on that list.
I would put him right behind Daniel Jones. If Daniel Jones goes out, it's over. Having the most important guy protecting him and the anchor, and also not only just losing Andrew Thomas, but the domino effect of, losing him on this offensive line because it's very, very thin behind them. And now all of a sudden you're plugging in guys that we are going to be up at night worrying about is going to, protect the life of our quarterback.
Yeah. And, we were talking, I don't know if it was last episode or the episode before, the review episode before, we were kind of ranking offseason needs as we kind of saw it. Offensive line depth was certainly something that we were talking about. I was kind of speaking specifically about guard, but swing tackle. I mean, this is sort of the issue that they're in now. And this is the best situation that they've had in a while, and it still sucks, right? I mean, this is the best starting 5 that they've had in a very long time. And you have former starters as your first guy off the bench. So, I mean, that's an upgrade in and of itself, but it's still not good enough. I mean, right now the plan is that Josh Ezeudu is going to be playing left tackle. And last time we saw him play left tackle, Daniel Jones needed neck surgery.
Yeah. Well, I guess my question for you is, if you were head coach, would you bring him in or would you move Loomer over to the left side and start shuffling people around?
It's funny because I would do exactly what they're doing. I'm not thrilled about putting Ezeudu at left tackle. I don't even really know that I think he's a tackle, but that's what they designate him as, the head coach, and whoever makes those decisions. I'm not entirely sure. Ultimately, Brian Daboll, but I'm sure other people as well. They determine that he is the backup tackle. And that's where Josh Ezeudu is playing. I don't agree with that, but if that's what they think, then that's what I do. I bring the backup tackle up. I don't switch things around. And the reason I don't switch things around is because in the current NFL, with the limited practice reps to go around in spring and in summer, and then even more during the regular season, there's just not enough time. There's just not enough time to cross-train stuff like that. And that's kind of been my argument every time they do this stupid bullshit in the spring and summer. We've seen it all 3 years now, all 3 summers with Brian Daboll of playing musical chairs on the O-line. And in year one, you can kind of say, oh, he's taking over a roster, so he's trying to figure it out, and that's fine. Year two, you start getting annoyed. Year three, we're still fucking doing it, and we were getting mad. And the reason is because you just don't have the reps to play around like this. And I guess ultimately that's what they've figured out, but that's a whole bunch of wasted reps that happened in the summer. So, yeah, I do it this way, even though Illuminator is the better tackle. I
Mhm.
think that this is probably the smartest, safest way to do it. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree with you for exact reason, and also because I think the way the offense is kind of morphed with Daniel Jones' limitation for throwing downfield a lot, that it's a lot more kind of 1-2 throw, release the ball, 1-2 quick pass out there. So he's not doing 7-8 step drops, looking around and potentially get killed. I think worrying about a left tackle may not be as serious as if this offense was a little different. I think it's because the way it's been designed now for Daniel Jones, we can maybe get away with it a little more.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. My only concern is that it seemed like it took 2 weeks for Daniel Jones to get comfortable with the fact that he could trust the O line. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
you look at those first 2 weeks of the season, and we talk about this quick pass thing, and I wish we could just throw the stats out because it paints a picture. The numbers paint a picture that I think if you watch games, you don't see the same thing from weeks 1 and 2 for weeks 3, 4, and 5. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
yes, he's not throwing it deep, but the pockets are good. He's
Mhm.
staying calm in the pocket. He's moving in the pocket well. The stuff downfield just isn't there, or and when it is there, he's not hitting it for accuracy reasons. But it's not like this quick game thing is not like a 1-2 and throw the ball kind of situation too often. It was last game, but you look at the Cleveland game and it didn't seem like that. I mean, to me, it was like that last game and the game before because there was no neighbors. Um, but now I think we're going to be reverting back. Everything I just said is going to get thrown out the window because I think immediately in this game, Daniel Jones is going to start running for his life, partly out of need and partly out of fear. That might be irrational, or yeah, I guess rational, but not grounded in reality.
Mhm.
And I think that this is a mess. It's a mess situation, and we could talk about this game, and we're going to talk about this game with the Philadelphia Eagles, but this is a year-long problem now. This is now the forever. This is the 2024 Giants. Is Andrew Thomas got to play 6 weeks, and that's that.
Do you have any kind of concerns that Andrew Thomas gets hurt every year?
No, I mean, I think if you were to take the data for all players and look at it year after year, I think we're entering a phase where players just get injured more often. I mean, there are just very few guys who don't get hurt every year. I mean, I feel like every this has been like my argument for a while now about building depth and how important it is to continue strong at positions you're strong at. Is that you can't rely on anybody to play a full season. It doesn't. It feels like nobody does that anymore at any position.
That's where I was leading you to, was that going forward, we need to be more prepared in the eventuality he's going to get hurt again.
Yes.
Some people are just more prone to injuries than others, whether it's their fault or not their fault, if it's a freak injury or not a freak injury. But it's becoming more and more each year that he has missed time, and we can't leave ourselves with our dicks in the wind by having Josh Azudu as the guy who has to come in if he's going to be out for an extended amount of time. So that's kind of where I meant, that's what the question was going for, is we got to realize this as an organization. And that's saying cut Andrew Thomas or get rid of him, but we should be prepared for this going forward, that he's going to be another year older and potentially something could happen again for him.
Yeah, it's less than Andrew Thomas thing and more of a preparedness thing. I think. I mean, like AJ Brown misses time every year. Name a player, they miss time every single year, and linemen are in a physical uh, position on every single play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Their offensive linemen play every down, as opposed to sometimes running backs don't, sometimes tight ends don't, sometimes wide receivers don't. Um, and when I think of a particular player that has an injury problem, I think of people like that put themselves in harm's way unnecessarily. Like Andrew Thomas is always as part of his job in a physical position where he might end up on the ground and someone might end up on the back of his legs, and that's just part of his job.
Mhm.
Tyrod Taylor broke his ribs falling on the ball. Tua gave himself a concussion running headfirst into Damar Hamlin. Those are individuals that I think have an injury problem. Everyone else, I think it's just, I hate to harp on this, but I think it's just a product of a CBA that was not put in place by people that know what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah, it's fair.
Um, so that's the Andrew Thomas situation. One other thing I want to bring up about Andrew Thomas and how it pertains to the Giants, and I'm sorry that we're getting off the Eagles game here a little bit, but I've
It's
seen
fine.
this. I follow a lot of NFL fans on Twitter, and beyond fans, I follow accounts that cover every single team. Um, for instance, the locked on guy for the Chiefs, I've followed for a number of years, and he has been pounding the table for either Jalen Hyatt or Darius Slayton the moment the Chiefs lost their wide receivers, which is a very I am the center of the universe point of view, I think. Um, and now more than ever, I mean, the moment the Andrew Thomas thing came down, I saw two things. I saw, trade Darius Slayton to the Chiefs now for a sixth, or I saw, um, Dexter Lawrence going to the Detroit Lions or the Minnesota Vikings. Though
Uh,
the Darius Slayton thing, I mean, I think you can make a case for given, you know, his contract situation and the Giants' unwillingness to really commit to him long term.
mhm.
But Dexter Lawrence, this team, just because this season might be done, they are not in a tear it down Cleveland Browns situation, right? I mean, he is part of their long term build. They are building. It's just
Yeah,
that this season is catapulted. I,
we
I,
we
I
we
don't know. Everyone thinks that everything as soon as the season's over, it's a burn everything to the ground kind of situation is very, very stupid to me.
it doesn't make any. Yeah, I mean this. We've had some bad breaks that this team. We've said this before. The record of this team could be a lot different if breaks have gone our way. A fumble here on the 1 yard line or something, or having a kicker not get hurt. Changes things around, and we're playing. Other than the first game, we're really playing close games that could go either way. So I think this team bottomed out already in past years. I think, there are obviously some major things that have to be addressed going forward to get to the next levels. But we're not in a situation where we have to tear it down to get ourselves. We're going to have our cap situation will be okay. We have all our draft picks. We'll be okay with that. The decision will be made about the quarterback. That's going to be a big one. But we're not in a need to have. We're not the Eagles of a couple of years ago that just went all in on a bunch of vets at high priced vets, and now there's no point of having them anymore. Just get rid of them. Now, if somebody wants Jalen Hyatt, that's a different story. They make me an offer, you can have them. But someone like Darius Slayton, or especially Dex is ridiculous. I mean, those guys don't grow on trees, and they're extremely, extremely, extremely expensive to replace to get what you're
And that's and
losing
that's
for
the
it.
whole point. Like, that's why they extended him early, because
Mm-hmm.
they made him like the highest paid defensive tackle, and then like a year later he became like the fifth highest, even though
Yeah,
he's like the best.
yeah.
So yeah, and as like a side note, as we get into just other news around the NFL, we saw um, Devontae Adams slept at Aaron Rodgers' house while he was playing a game or something. Um, and now he's a Jet, and yeah, I guess someone's going to try and tell me that Aaron Rodgers isn't actually running the team. And
I have
the
no
Bill,
idea.
yeah, and the Bills acquired Amari Cooper. Um, those are different situations. The Raiders, I'm not really sure Antonio Pierce is even going to be the head coach next year. Good for him. I hope him the best. That has nothing to do with it. But like those two organizations are in a very different spot of their
Sure.
building of a franchise than the New York Giants are. And there's a reason that those players want out.
And
And
they're both dysfunctional franchises to begin with. And the Jets have this clearly they got to win now. They're built for Aaron Rodgers. And
mhm.
so yeah. One final thing I want to get back to with the Thomas thing, and just your opinion that a lot of people, and I brought it up too, about at what point do you bench Daniel Jones for the medical potential, for
Mhm.
the injury and stuff. Do you see now that Andrew Thomas is out for the year that might happen sooner than later, but not sooner until as soon as their whatever their milepost will be like mathematically eliminated from the playoffs or something? Do you see it happening quicker than before the injury?
Quicker than before the Andrew Thomas injury, probably, but I don't think that they're going to make a coaching decision based off of contract situation. I know that Dable and Shane are mostly lockstep, but we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about week 7 right now.
Oh no, yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
mean. Like it's not going to
yeah.
happen
So,
now, regardless. But I think you get to
but
week
why not? I
12.
mean, if you're already thinking about it and you're worried now that he's going to take a blindside hit, it shouldn't matter one way or another. You're either going to make a decision based on that or you're
Mm-hmm.
not. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And I think a lot of that decision is going to come Sunday at like 4:05.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, that's what really, really sucks about losing that Cincinnati game is, if you win that Cincinnati game, you can talk yourself into we could still win this division because this division might be the worst in the NFL right now. And like the year, like was it 2, 3 years ago, when we were that the year we lost to Philly in that last game, it was like this is a horrible division, but we still win the division. You know,
mhm.
losing that game last week, and if we lose this game this week, really puts potential. And I'm not saying we bench Daniel Jones on Monday going forward, but the decision if we're playing meaningless games in December, that decision may come sooner because the chance of an injury is greater without Andrew Thomas.
Yeah, I don't really know. I'm not good at I know John Mara doesn't want that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you know, no owner wants to see his team visibly give up, especially very early in the season. Um, on the flip side, it's John Mara specifically that's directly hurt by um, being cash strapped because of that injury clause. Because you can fire Brian Dable and Joe Shane. The Giants are still going to suck if whatever GM you bring, someone's going to have to deal with that cap problem and
Mm-hmm.
roster problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, you can blame and you can fire, but at the end of the day, you're still John Mara, you're still the owner. So you get hurt no matter what. So, um, but at the same time, no owner wants to see his team visibly give up, especially very early in the season. So
Yeah.
I I don't know. I also look back at the specific play in which Daniel Jones got drilled when Josh Azudu was playing left tackle, and he like tripped over his own feet. Um, and Izudu has his issues, but that also some part of me is like, is that just like a bad like series of events? Is that just like the worst domino situation? You know what I mean? Like
He's had
sometimes
bad luck. He's had bad luck in his career. I mean, he went down for the ACL. It was non-contact. He just
true.
he has unfortunate, and I just suffered it last week in Florida with Mertz. Exact same thing. Non-contact injury after throwing a touchdown, out for the year. College career over, untouched, with an offensive line just like the Giants that's playing better. It's getting cohesion finally and outdone. But
Um,
I also don't think these decisions aren't going to be made until we get to weeks 14, 15, 16. I was just wondering if it may happen a week or two earlier
yeah, I
than.
mean, I think it could a week or two earlier than previous. Yeah,
Mhm.
certainly, because this isn't Greg Van Roten going down at right guard. This isn't John Michael Schmitz going down at center and having to move Greg Van Roten to center and then figuring out right guard. I mean, this is the spot that couldn't get fucked up.
Yep. One of your
So
pillars of the franchise. Yeah.
sure. Um, one other thing on the players moving around. Jamal Adams wants out of Tennessee. Is Jamal Adams just a bitch at this point? Gets drafted by the Jets, demands he leaves, goes to Seattle. They don't do shit. He
So
leaves.
he,
Now the Jets are actually a Super Bowl contender before Tennessee. He wants out again. I mean, I despise this era of players demanding. You signed a
bitch.
contract. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like Devontae Adams, I'm not even on board with, but I mean, Amari Cooper, you can make the argument like, look, this team is definitely not going anywhere in the next 4 years. I don't deserve this, and I'm on the back half of my career. Jamal Adams is a young guy, and he's in this situation. He could have been on the Jets right now.
It's only going to get worse, Grump, because now it's going to, in college without a transfer portal. I mean, with a transfer portal, if the coach looks at you funny, I'm transferring. So
Mm-hmm.
the culture of player empowerment and I can go wherever I want, whether I have a contract or not, or whatever. You're going to see more and more of this. Like they think they ultimately have hand, and unless we have GMs that have more backbone and say, fuck you,
Well,
you have a contract, you're playing for us.
to me, it's somewhat of a dickless maneuver because if
Sure.
you're such a good player, then you should be making the team that isn't good better over the next couple of years to become a contender. You don't need to join a winner already. You know what I mean? And again, like there are exceptions. Amari Cooper leaving Cleveland. Cleveland is not going anywhere because of horrible decisions. Tennessee, they're bad this year. Fine. But next year it could flip all around. The Jets were terrible last year, but 2
The
years
clock
ago,
is ticking. Amari
yeah,
Cooper's not a young guy. He's not 24 anymore. The clock is
exactly.
ticking on him too.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry,
And
off topic, but a lot of
no,
that going on this week.
yeah, it's just a problem we're going to have to deal with at the college level and the NFL level. And the wide receiver is the most prima donna position in football anyway, and it just seems like they're getting worse and worse.
Speaking of wide receivers, but not divas, Malik Neighbors has cleared concussion protocol, so that's good. We will get to see Malik Neighbors in this game. It seems like, I don't know if anything is 100% confirmed yet, but that seems very likely. And Devin Singletary and Darius Slayton still listed as questionable with some nagging injuries. Darius Slayton being pretty courageous. He's been playing pretty obviously hurt for the last 2 weeks, and he keeps getting up and going out there. Devin Singletary back in there to help spell Tyrone Tracy. I think that will help the running game a little bit, although I think that's going to be tough in this game anyway. Why don't you give me your thoughts, the Giants offense versus the Eagles defense for this game?
This Giant offense is just, from week to week, there's just no consistency. Daniel Jones looked good the previous 2 weeks and was terrible last week. Now we're going to have a shuffling. Are we going to go back to trying to force feed Malik Neighbors? And when Malik Neighbors may not be 100%, just because he's cleared to play, how effective is he actually going to be? I mean, he's had a couple of practices here, but he really hasn't played in a couple of weeks. And also his eggs are scrambled a little bit. And so let's see. It's going to take probably a couple weeks for him to get back to normal shape, just normal headspace and everything. So, are we going to try to force feed him again with 13, 14 targets? How many snaps will he actually take? Yeah, I mean, again, an offensive line is a chain, and now the weak link is in that chain. And I'm fearing the dominoes of that weak link. I'm very worried. This is an offense that can't score touchdowns. They certainly can't do it in chunk plays, and they just, they have trouble in the red zone scoring. So I'm just worried about, where are the points coming from, the consistent points coming from. And then one last thing is, I'm very worried about our kicking game. Even if we even get into field goal range, is that going to force us to make decisions because of no confidence in the kicking game anymore?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think that they have no confidence in the kicking game. I think that they have a backup kicker, and you know what you're getting. You're getting a 50% shot. It's totally different than when you have literally no kicker and you have your punter doing the kicking.
It's not the same as the Washington game, but I bet you it factors somewhat into the decision making on some play calls.
Sure.
It's not helping them.
It factors in because the offense is already bad. So
yes.
If you're the Giants, you're considering kicking a field goal when it's 3rd and 2 at the opponent's 42-yard line. You might be playing for a fucking field goal because you have Graham Gano theoretically, and because you're like, I don't know if we're going to get 2 yards. But if you're a competent NFL offense that Brian Daboll would like to run, if you're the Buffalo Bills of a couple of years ago, you're not considering a field goal under any regard in that spot on the field in that situation. So yeah, I think it's a little team specific at this time.
Yes.
Only because the extended range and the limited confidence in what you have in your offense. I don't think that that's who Brian Dable is. And I think that if you have a competent offense, you're talking about kicking most of your field goals within the 30-yard range, in which case I'm pretty comfortable with this guy kicking those. I'm sure Brian Dable's pretty comfortable with him kicking those. But that's the reason he's a backup, is because once you get to 40 plus, he's not nearly as good as the best.
Yeah.
When I look at this offense versus defense, the Eagles are pretty banged up as well, in addition to playing horribly. But that's, we'll get to their offense in a little bit. They're messed up on defense. Darius Slay is somehow still on this team, and he's hurt. I don't really know what the plan is for guarding Malik Neighbors, but whatever the plan is, I feel pretty confident that Brian Dable has a better plan to get him open. We've seen it week after week with Malik Neighbors. They find a way to get Neighbors matched up against somebody that they deem a favorable matchup. And at this point, I think you can say, like, Kenyon Mitchell is somebody I really, really like. I really liked him down at the Senior Bowl. I liked him in the draft process. And he's looked good for the Eagles. He's still a rookie, and he's still a rookie out of Toledo. You know what I mean? Like, there's a huge learning curve there. And, Malik Neighbors has been doing his thing at LSU in the SEC for years. And
he's doing his thing now in the NFL too.
Yeah, he's schooling NFL vets. So, even if they do get matched up, I feel pretty okay with that matchup, so long as the ball can be thrown somewhat on target and on time. But they don't really look as good in the back end. I do like their safety duo there with Sidney Brown. I super like. And Reed Blankenship's been really productive for them back there. But everywhere else, they seem banged up. They're banged up on the defensive line. They're banged up at the linebacker position. Linebacker position hasn't been very good at all. They've been very middling for them. And it's a real shame, because I think that if Andrew Thomas isn't hurt and everything else is the same, I think that this offense scores points. I mean, I feel very confident in that. I mean, like, Malik Neighbors is really the missing piece of the last 2 weeks. And I feel pretty confident they beat the Bengals if Malik Neighbors is able to play. Yeah, it's a bitch, because losing Andrew Thomas might just torpedo this entire game. It just may not matter anything else that we talk about for the rest of the episode. Andrew Thomas isn't there. Josh Zazut is playing left tackle. This offense is going to be able to move the ball one lick. So I don't know. We're going to have to see. This one might come up to scheme and Neighbors just doing Neighbors things. You know what I mean? We might be looking at Matt Stafford throwing to Calvin Johnson 6 times a game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I think this game comes down to 2 things, and I don't know if we're ready for predictions yet, but
no, we got to get to the defense too.
Okay. Let me hold off on what I was about to say. Let's start with defense first.
All right. So flipping back to the defense, Kayvon Thibodeau is still out. He's going to be out for another couple of weeks. Although Azeez Ojulari came to play last week.
He sure did. We both gave him a star. Yeah.
Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns missed 2 days of practice this week. Both expressed confidence that they will play Sunday. Burns playing through a groin injury that he's been playing through since before the last game. Dexter Lawrence said he just needed a little bit of extra rest. There isn't a whole lot of extra detail on that. It feels like, other than Kayvon, this is a pretty healthy defense right now. Although Adoree', I don't know if Adoree' practiced, and I didn't see a whole lot of...
I don't believe he did.
Yeah, no. And I didn't see a whole lot of talk about that, but that's a huge... yeah. I mean, that's going to be huge. Cordell Flott has shown that in practice he looks like garbage, and in games he has very, very obvious big plays that he screws up, and then he has other plays where he shows up and he looks pretty... I don't want to say pretty good, but he looks sort of like he belongs out there.
Competent.
Yeah. One of those games was last year against A.J. Brown. He looked pretty damn good. That was also, I believe, during Philly's toilet swirl at the end of the season. Now, that would be a caveat if that swirl weren't still going down the drain right now. I mean, the Philly offense seems to be the real bugaboo right now. It's There is a huge disconnect somewhere between the quarterback and either the play caller and Kellen Moore or the head coach and Nick Sirianni or whatever it is. Something is still not resolved on offense from last season with Philly.
Yeah, we heard in the offseason from NFL insiders that they hate each other. They did. There is like almost a complete lack of communication between Sirianni and Hurts, and I believe it. You can tell by just kind of the dysfunction on offense. And this could be a game that if we beat them could get Sirianni fired. I think
sure.
I mean it's really something how we have two coaches in this division that are on higher hot seats than a New York Giant football coach right now. It's kind of weird, but it's kind of where we are at this moment. Where we'll talk about the dumpster fire in Arlington shortly, but this feels like a house of cards. With this, and I think the Turk is coming before the season ends for Sirianni.
Yeah, on the flip side, it is possible that this could be a total get-right game for them, right? I mean, like, we're not getting to predictions yet, but it is not unfeasible that this is like a 42-10 game for Philly. It absolutely could spiral out of control. I mean, if the defense starts scoring points because Daniel Jones is sack fumbling, I mean, it's hands. I mean, 42-7 is absolutely a possibility at that point if that's what we start seeing. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting how much is kind of riding on this game. If it's a close game, nothing happens. But if they lose in any capacity to Andrew Thomas-less Giants, it's not good for Nick Sirianni.
Especially with all the attention on the game to the the running back who will name nameless.
Let's
playing
talk
against
about him though.
All right, fine.
Because that's undoubtedly going to become a part of the atmosphere in the stadium. It's going to be a storyline that you hear everywhere. So
let's make this personally. How do you feel about this? Because we're hearing all about the media is trying to tell us one thing, and we've heard fans. But I'm curious, what is your take on? Because we have not talked about this. Like going in there, are you ready to boo his ass every play? Are you indifferent? Are you? I'm always be a fan. Where do you stand on this?
No, I mean, I'm probably in the middle on Saquon Barkley. I am not somebody who's going to go out of his way to boo his ass every. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have like a specific ill will towards him. This isn't. We've seen far worse instances of players leaving a team and immediately shit talking the team he left, or what I mean, like that's happened in the NFL before. That's not really what happened in this situation. So I have no reason to waste a whole bunch of energy making sure I stand up and boo every time he gets the ball or his name is announced or anything like that. So that's off the table. I'm also right away off the table, always a fan. I don't know if there's not very many people I would ever say always a fan about. And he's definitely not going to be one of them. He is a little bit of a jerk off. There is some hurt feelings in there. I don't think that there was I think that there was a less than 0.5% chance that he was going to come back to the Giants, and he knew that at the end of last year, which is fine. But then everything that he said after that moment is then just horseshit, which is just stick to your guns, man. Just say it. Just say that you're unhappy. You know what I mean? I would rather you be butthurt and in your feelings about what happened and you be upfront about it than be butthurt and in your feelings and then not say anything until you left. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, I am more ready to, for me, the Barkley situation is more about the Eagles organization, Eagles fans, Howie Roseman, and, if Saquon Barkley were Saquon Barkley for the LA Chargers, I'm not sure that they spend all the money that they have to spend to get him. Not just to take him out of the division, but just because he's a Giants player. Like you've said it before. I think I've said it too. Howie Roseman seems to go for like the media crazy moves. And it's not the same as Jerry Jones gathering names. It's like the media says this guy is good, so I'm going to get him.
Yeah, and it also feels like Harry Roseman's job is to troll the Giants.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And
specifically the Giants. Like it is. he takes it personally. This, the New York Philly thing, the inferiority complex Philadelphia has for the city of New York.
I guess the how I land on Saquon Barkley is I am ready to cheer when he does something really stupid. And as Giants fans, we've seen him do a number of really unclutch things. And it seems like Philly is only just. I was watching a Philly thing earlier today where they were like, it's so uncharacteristic of him to miss this block. And I almost fell out of my chair. I was like, uncharacteristic? I mean, the notes go all the way back to college. What do you mean uncharacteristic? He has never been a good blocker. It's what we've bitched about for years. There's plenty of film of it. You know what I mean? It's a note in his draft profile.
Go back to the archives of this show where we complained about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that Eagles fans are only just now finding out, like, oh, Saquon Barkley isn't a major difference maker anymore at this point in his career. Yeah, he's a talented guy, whatever, but like he doesn't have the same impact that a Malik Neighbors has. And and everything that the Giants had to do there, where they had to end up choosing a quarterback over him because he wasn't willing to sign when they wanted to sign him, and then ended up picking a wide receiver. These were smart football moves that, Eagles fans thought they got one over on us, and I would love to see them just not. I want the evidence to be in a Giants-Eagles game. I think that the evidence is going to show out at the end of the year, but it becomes a debate topic that I don't feel like getting into. I'd rather just have the concrete evidence, like, we beat you, he was bad in the game, and that's that. And that's why I'm really pissed that Andrew Thomas can't play in this game, because I really feel like I don't want to say it would be no contest, but I think we would be looking at, with a healthy Malik Neighbors, a healthy Andrew Thomas, I think we'd be looking at something closer to the Seattle game than we would be looking at the Dallas game.
We would win. We would play a game and potentially win a game, which I always refer to as winning in the muck. Controlling the line of scrimmage, controlling time of possession, having another one of these 15, 16 play drives. The difference, hopefully, is once you get into the red zone, we actually can punch it in. And that's been the bugaboo with this team, is if you have a 15, 16-yard drive that takes 9 minutes, fantastic. If you get nothing out of it, it's a backbreaker and it's a killer. And you start to think about it more. So my feeling about Barkley is, at the end of the day, this was a decision that we made. This wasn't a guy, this is not a jilted lover who left us at the altar for some other, girlfriend or something. It's a position that we were in, whether it's our fault or not. We were in a position where, did it make football sense to keep him? And we made the call that we were not going to spend what it takes to keep the guy. And, watch our running game this year. It is, maybe if we had a guy like him who can take one of these holes, instead of going 9 yards, can go 30 yards. But at the end of the day, we're running the ball better than I thought we would have. It's not dynamic, but it's not because of him that we're not running the ball as great as we could have been. I'm not going to boo the guy. I'm not going to cheer the guy because he's a guy wearing green now. And I hope the Giant fan, if you want to get your booze out when they run on the field. Maybe the first time he carries, but grow up. Don't be that fan base where every time he touches the ball throughout the game, you're booing, and it's just kind of like.
I think it's fair. I think it's fair for Giants fans to feel jilted because he was unwilling to negotiate. And I think you're 100% right. I think that this was a move that we made. I think that's actually very eloquently put. We put ourselves in a situation where we had a number and we were not going to budge, which is the position that he wanted to be in, right? And that's the position he ultimately was in. But I can't get over the fact, I can't let go of the fact that Joe Shane reached out to him in the middle of 2022. Mm-hmm. He could still be here. He didn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And he was holding out for more money. So if you're a Giants fan, I think it's okay to be that guy where you're going to boo him every single time, winding up going to Philly, and then, of course, embracing everything Philly. All of a sudden, you're super active on Twitter and talking about how great. I get it. I'm not that guy, But
Mhm.
I mean, you couldn't have, other than being Tiki or, you know what I mean, or outright trashing the organization you just left, you couldn't do a more infuriating thing to a fan base.
I also, though, I'm going to put it in the perspective of me, where he was never my guy. I know a
Fair.
lot. I know a lot of Giant fans, especially a lot of younger Giant fans than me. That's your Carmelo Anthony. That's your guy. And then when your guy leaves, you may not be. It's like your first love, like your first true girlfriend or your first wife. And if it goes south, you don't know how to handle it, and you're just like, fuck her. And I think a lot of fans, who your first true love leaves, and for a lot of this fan base, Saquon is your guy. You're feeling fuck him right now, and I get it. There'll be
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
The other thing too, one more thing is, never mind the salary cap implications. The Giants just are not at that point in their arc to have a guy like him to take us over
Sure.
the top. We are still, you don't want to hear it, but we're still rebuilding, and we're not at the super bottom, but we're certainly not anywhere near the top, where spending that money and doing it right, going for it now, makes a lot of sense. So it's not just the financial situation; it's just, where are we? I mean, what is this team if he's on this team right now?
You were saying about the what would we be? Maybe our running game isn't as dynamic. A lot of what I'm seeing from Tyrone Tracy specifically, more so than Devin Singletary, is broken tackles.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not something I was seeing Saquon doing in the last 2 years. Making tacklers miss, sure. One in the open field, yes. Multiple, no. And anytime he was getting hit, he was pretty much going down. I mean, he didn't really break that many tackles in the last couple of years.
Well, look at his highlights this year with the Eagles. I mean, the long run against New Orleans,
It's just wide open lanes.
a truck could have run through.
Exactly.
And so it's not like exactly. Again, I'm not trying to minimize. He is a talent. He's really good, but I mean, let's not get crazy that he's just all of a sudden, he's Earl Campbell all of a sudden.
Yeah, I'm right on board with you there. The rest of the Eagles' offense, one other thing, because we were talking about Adoree Jackson, Jahan Dotson joining this team with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, that's going to be a problem if Adoree Jackson can't play. Cordell Flott, I was singing his praises, sort of. Does show up.
In proper perspective, you were. Yeah.
Yeah. He does show up in moments, but to consistently throughout an entire game have to go up against one of those three guys, I don't anticipate that ending well for us.
Yeah, it's not. He shows up in moments. We need hours.
Yes.
I don't know if he's going to give us hours, unfortunately.
All right. Hit me with your prediction on this game, Mike.
Grump, everything I touch turns to shit. If you look at my betting app, you see a lot of losses because I think I know something, and I'm usually wrong. I think this game is going to be kind of in the muck. And I think there's two things that are going to determine this game. Who does a better job coaching, and who has the least amount of penalties/turnovers. And while on paper this looks like a game where we have no chance to win, I'm going to do something which I haven't done all year. I'm going against my gut, my judgment, my heart, my brain. And I think we're going to be that team this week that has the least amount of mistakes. I think we're going to continue to keep having these long drives. I think, if we don't have touchdowns on them, I think at least we get field goals on them. I just think this Philly team is teetering on the brink of disaster, mental disaster, as well as physical disaster. And I just see that. I just see Brian Daboll out-coaching Nick Sirianni. I see us making less mistakes. I'm calling the upset of the year on this show. I think we are going to win this game. Low scoring, ugly, but I think we win. Let's give this a 14-10 win.
Interesting.
And this is coming from the least optimistic Giant fan that you probably know at this point.
Well, you just did it right there. You gave us the shyest touch. It's weird because on the one hand, I'm worried that we won't be able to move the ball whatsoever. And that really, really, really worries me. On the other hand, it's been 2 games, but I want to say almost 20 days since we've seen Malik Neighbors play because of the Thursday night game,
Mhm.
right? Like I feel like it's been forever since we've seen him, and I think I forgot just how weird, like how alien he is. Um, and so you initially say 14-10, and I'm like, we're scoring 2 touchdowns and that's it. Like no field goals, like we're just scoring points now. And then I was like, oh yeah, well, I mean, I could see Malik Neighbors just catching something off of somebody's dome and taking it the distance. You know,
Yeah,
uh, I
it could
don't,
be
I
my
don't
14
know.
my 14 points could be, a 10-minute drive, 17 plays where it's 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, we go for it and we punch it in at the 2. And the second score could be Malik Neighbors getting loose and, yak of 75 yards on a play for a touchdown. And that could be our 14 points.
Yeah,
I think something that's kind of our defense has been playing really well the last couple of weeks too. And I think that helps with this muckiness of this game also. We don't
sure.
we don't have to outscore people. We can't, but I think the defense is doing its job to keep us in a position to win where 1 or 2 plays could win it for us, and that's maybe all
And
we need.
we didn't really talk about Jordan Mailata is hurt too. Andrew Thomas is hurt and he's out. Jordan Mailata is going to play hurt, I think.
Mhm.
Um, and Yeah, I don't know. This is probably the toughest prediction for me because I already said I could see this game going extremely far south. I could see this as a get right
Sure.
game for Philly right off the get go, depending on just how bad Josh Azudu is at left tackle and what Vic Fangio decides to throw at the Giants offense immediately, and if they can figure that out.
Yeah,
I
Daniel
think I'm.
Jones is Daniel Jones is a major concern for me too. Just he's going to have to play smart. He's going to have to play quick. He's going to have to be decisive in his decisions, and that is very hit and miss with him. And the Fangio defense makes it very difficult, and also having not having your left tackle makes it even more difficult.
I don't know. I don't. I don't. I don't. I don't think that it's going to be a win for the Giants. I think I'm going to predict this as being a comfortable win for Philadelphia, but not a pretty one. I think if you were to critically look at it, I think if you were an honest Philly fan, you'd be like, we won that game because they're busted up and they're not very good too. So I think that this one might be like something 20-9.
Mm.
Um,
Do you
yeah.
walk out of the building feeling like forget losing to Philly? Do you walk out of the building assessing this team like there's light at the end of the tunnel with this, or just ugh?
I think that when your left tackle is hurt and you can't do anything, I think anytime you can't do anything on offense, it's hard to ever feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I think for this game, you have 2 major problems. One is you have a quarterback that you don't believe is the future, and you have a left tackle that's hurt. And both of them will prevent you from winning games, no matter the
Mhm.
other situations around it. Because I think the other situations around it are pretty good. I think you have a decent wide receiver 3. I think you have a good wide receiver 2. I think you've got a great wide receiver 1. You've got decent tight ends. You've got decent running backs. You've got a good offensive line outside of the injury, and the lack of depth. I think you have the formula to win, and you're missing 2 critical pieces. One due to unfortunate circumstances, and the other due to, I, I, I guess, unfortunate circumstances.
And
I don't know what
the,
you want to call that.
and also let's until we see it, let's hope that Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns are on the field. They say they're going to play, but they also didn't practice today.
Yeah,
So let's let's hope they actually are on the field, because if they're not on the field either, take my prediction and throw it in the garbage.
Dallas is off this week, but Washington is playing the Carolina Panthers. I think it's in Carolina, but I don't really feel like looking it up, and I don't know that it really matters. I'm picking Washington to win that game. Carolina might be one of the worst. They might be the Chicago White Sox of the NFL.
Yeah, they're really bad. So we both agree Washington's the best team in the division now, huh?
I still think the bottom is coming out from underneath this midway through the year.
Well, right
I
now, let's say.
right now, yeah, it's indisputable. But
Mhm.
I think that all four of the teams, when all things are considered in the NFC East, are actually very, very equal up until the Andrew Thomas injury. The Giants
Oof.
might just completely bottom out because of that. But I think Philly has the best roster and might be the worst coached. And Dallas is a great roster with a bad coach, and Philly said, "Hold my beer." Washington and New York are kind of building up, and right now, and they're at different stages because Washington has their quarterback. The Giants are still kind of figuring that out, but they're more complete. And also, Jaden Daniels, to me, I said it all the way through. He was my favorite quarterback in this, but he's going to need time. Eventually, we saw how fucking useless he was against us.
Mhm.
That game was the story of Jaden Daniels is a little bit different if there's a kicker in that game.
Yeah.
So I do think that eventually the Commanders, the age on defense will come back to bite them at some point late in the year. I think those guys will be burnt out and hurt. And I think that the inexperience with Jaden Daniels and defense is kind of figuring out what they need to do to contain him and force him to try and read a defense and throw things based on moving parts in the back end post snap. I think that that's going to hinder their progress going forward. But right now, they are the clear best team in the division. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's going to do it for this episode. Our next episode will be Tuesday morning, and it will be with our usual setup. So be sure to follow us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and of course YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan, and at Just Giants Pod. And until next time, go
Go
Giants.
Giants.